Welcome to Light It Up, a podcast about resilient women balancing motherhood, their careers, personal lives, and all of the challenges that come along with being a superwoman. Each week, you'll be motivated to take action to lead, inspire, transform, and empower. Now, here's your host, Dr. Aginah M. Good morning. I want to welcome you to another episode of Light It Up. I'm so excited about today's episode because I have a very special guest, Dr. Ketra Davenport-King, who is an author, an educator, as well as a public servant, services the community in various capacities, one of which is as it relates to advocacy and working with victims of sexual abuse. So we're going to have a conversation today about her not-for-profit organization, her advocacy group, as well as her brand new book, Seeing Beyond the Shattered Glass. So welcome, Dr. Ketra, to Light It Up. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Dr. Aginah, for having me as your guest today. I look forward to this opportunity to share, and I'm just excited. I don't take any opportunity lightly. So I look forward to seeing what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and we did have an opportunity to talk a little bit last week, hit it off very well. So that was, found out we had a few things in common in terms of working in the field of education. And so as I mentioned, you are a teacher.
Yes.
So you're teaching high school.
Yes, I am a high school business teacher. I teach in our career technology education sector in Texas, because we're in Texas. So I've done that. I've been in education for the last 10 years, and I prepare students for the next business world from all kind of facets, but that's the premise of what I do.
Right. So I guess I'm trying to figure out where we should begin. I think I'd like to probably start with the Rock Dimensional Consulting, where you have established this consulting company where you actually coach and train leaders and develop and educate church ministries, and then hosting various leaderships and seminars and workshops. Could you talk about why you started this organization and what's the significance and the importance for Rock Consulting?
Great question. So the reason why I started Rock Dimensional Consulting is interesting because it kind of go into the reason why I got my doctorate degree. Interesting. When I was sitting observing when I was in grad school getting my MBA in management, and I used to just observe leaders because that's what we often do. We watching leaders, the person who is leading, and I used to say, man, I want to know more about leadership because I've seen a lot of ineffective leaders. I see more managers that were in leadership roles versus leaders in leadership roles. And so that became my pursuit to want to be able to train leaders on what effective leadership look like. So that is the thrust of me just jumping right in and obtaining a doctorate in strategic leadership and organizational structure. So out of that birth Rock Dimensional Consulting, where I'm able to go in and train leaders and train their staff and help businesses formulate in regards to business plans and nonprofit organizations and get their status, and just really consult and be a voice of understanding and patience. One of my signature seminars is leadership recourse. And of course, recourse means to revisit, to reignite, to re-engage. Is because, yes, you have been in business doing what you do all the time, but that leadership recourses help us to go back and revisit those things that we may have forgotten, like culture and agility and how to connect with our staff and how to know that we create leaders and not people. You got to be able to say, I want the people to become leaders so they can one day, if they need to, supersede me, then my God, go ahead and do it. But I think that is my purpose in Rock Dimensional Consulting.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up about developing leaders, because that is the crust of having an organization that's sustainable, that you will have succession planning so that you can have somebody to take on once you've decided to either, transition into something else, retire, etc.
Yes, that is so true, Dr. Gina, because especially in ministry, on the ministry side, one of the things that I seen that was a negligence was the inability to create a succession plan. That means start developing other leaders to become the pastor. I know sometimes we want to hold on to this position, but we're not going to always be in that role. And I believe that, for one, that was really my thrust, because I've been in ministry for so long, that I wanted to see how to train church lay leaders and leaders, and how to build a great point you made, the succession plan, and as well as, Fortune 500 companies, so you can start building leaders.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you've been doing this for the last 15 years, so you have an extensive amount of experience in that area. Now,
Yes.
and you mentioned, of course, and I think I did introduce you as Dr. Ketra. How long ago did you complete your program? And have you seen where completing your doctorate has actually helped enhance, the work that you do in the consulting world as far as developing leaders?
Yeah, so I completed my studies in 2018. I started in 2012. It was a journey, because, you don't get a doctorate, you become a doctor. And so therefore it's not a race. It's just pacing yourself, through the journey. And so I did that. And in regards to have it enhanced, I mean, obviously, because when you become a doctor, there's a different level of expectation, or respect, I guess, if you would say, to come with the role. Because if you have Dr. Aginah, and you know that she has, one, been disciplined, she has persevered, she has been committed, so therefore the respect level come, and yes, I can say that it has enhanced my organization so well, and in regards to just the respect for what I do, and that is, I can't tell you that's the purpose why I got it, but I believe that I just really, sometimes we don't even know why God takes us down these roads that He does, but He did, and I kind of got that unction when I was completing my MBA in management.
Wonderful. Now let's talk about how you you then established a not-for-profit organization
Yes.
that's committed to the awareness and prevention of sexual abuse.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, because I know when we had our conversation last week, there was something that I said. I remember saying something about sexual assault
Yes. Oh, yes.
versus sexual abuse, right? And I know sometimes, people can put it all under one umbrella, but I guess before, as we get into your launch of your nonprofit, talk about the difference between the two, and then why you decided to launch your nonprofit to focus on that particular area.
That is a great, great, great question, Dr. Gina. Yes, there is definitely a thin line, I would say. It's very thin between sexual abuse, sexual assault, molestation, and rape. I mean, you can just intertwine them because it is very thin. However, with sexual abuse, there can be, the same characteristics as in regards to fondling or exposure, or, touching, and visual things, and they come along with that. And then assault obviously means that there has been a action that's very related to molestation and rape. So when you get to assault, that means he assaulted me. That means he may have came onto me. Maybe he aggressively came toward me, and he, pretty much was very rough handling. And yes, sex could come out of that, and it cannot come out of that. Just like with sexual abuse, like for me in my case, and I talked to that, I was sexually abused, and so therefore there was never intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
There was a other characteristics of sexual abuse. And then molestation is when there is a long stretch of time when you hear people say, well, I have been molested from the age of 5 until 12, or from 12 to 18. That means this person was repeatedly having sexual intercourse with them. So they were, whatever opportunity that they had, they were having sex with this person, and it became an emotional and, obviously physical breakdown of that individual. And I'm very sensitive to that, because there are a lot of people who have been victimized to any one of these sectors of abuse. And then as well as rape. I mean, we know what rape is. It's usually, it can be ongoing repeatedly. It can be over a period of days. It could be a one account, you was walking and somebody aggressively attacked you, and then they raped you. And assault means to hit, to beat, to shudder, so we know that. But those are the difference. And
Yeah.
so to go into why I started Life After Advocacy Group, because funny as it may be, I started LAG in 2004. So I started that organization in 2004, and the reason why I was birthed was because of my own personal story. Being a victim of sexual abuse, and we can talk a little bit about that more when we talk about the book, but that was my passion. So that was the purpose for the organization. It was the passion that pushed that purpose. And so I started that. I began to work in it. Definitely got involved in my community. I'm a liaison from the victim and the services that are provided to them, and making sure that they have a structured and safe place to go and seek counseling. I'm all about counseling, and in regards to, and also awareness and prevention, because if we can bring awareness, we can help prevent it, and then we can help, hopefully help the generational platform of it. So Life After Advocacy Group was birthed out of that in 2004.
What would you say? I mean, you mentioned, of course, prevention and awareness, which is very important. And, in our community,
Yes, that's true.
there are, there's history of, sexual abuse,
Yes.
and where it can go on for years, and
Yes.
the victim doesn't say anything, or people know, but they don't say anything, and they may turn a blind eye for whatever reason. What would you say, just based upon the training that you've obviously, been engaged in, and your experience, what would you say are some preventative measures that can be taken to decrease in, sexual abuse? Because there are, I mean, startling statistics, of course.
Yes.
I mean, when you look at
One
it,
in every 4.
exactly. So,
Great question. What I would say, one, it starts communication in the home. Parents need to speak to their children, whether boy and girl, about sexual abuse. Have code words. One of my things was, have someone touched your pretty. And you can make it as palatable as you can, but those conversations have to start at home. Your child, the child, need to feel safe and secure, that know that this has been a stimulated conversation with their mother or their father, so they can be able to say, if it happens, I can go tell my mommy. That's usually the problem, is you have the problem of silence. And you brought up a very good point. I would go ahead to say that it's the sweep under the rug type situation, and that has become, that's just generational, especially in a African American culture. We just don't want to talk about it. We don't want to blame the shame of our family, and we don't want that stigma. And so it's easy to mask. It's so easy to mask. And but I was just speaking to someone the other day, and I was explaining to them that when we don't forgive, or when we hold on to that, especially in this context of this conversation, that the abuser, he or she are just living life great, but you as a victim are somewhere secluded. Your voice have been just silenced. And that's why I really promote, that's one of my mantras in Life After Advocacy Group, is that struggle has no hold on the outcome. It's because you have to speak your truth and take your voice back. so that you be able to move forward with it. So yes, I definitely believe that we have to start with communication in the home. Also, I put in the back of my book, I did give some signs and signals about what you should look for. Usually kids who are very withdrawn and they are set apart. They're very rigid in regards to who they want to go with. If your child say, I don't want to go there, then listen to them. You know, don't yell at them and don't say, were you going here? Just ask them the conversation. What happened? Why don't you want to go? If they don't want to go to school, what's going on? You know, and and a person who is being abused, they tend to have trust issues. So they should be able to trust their parents when they can't trust anyone else.
Right.
They should be able to trust mom or trust dad. And me, in my case, I mean, my abuser, was my dad, was my biological dad. How do you take a child who's supposed to be trusting their father, but he is her abuser? And we, again, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yes, so definitely trust in building that culture. Be okay with talking about it. Be okay, and I say that and I stress that because you'll be amazed, Dr. Aginah, on how many families are not. They feel like if they don't talk about it, then it won't happen to them.
Yeah. And I was thinking about when I was growing up. I mean, I'm almost 43. So when I was growing up, my parents, one of the things that they didn't permit, I wasn't permitted to spend the night at anyone's house. Family, friends, there were specific family members. Actually, I only had one aunt and uncle whose house I could spend the night at. And I grew up like their daughter. They had an older son, but that was one of their ways, I felt like, of making sure that nothing happened, because they always talked about, full transparency, like you need to communicate if there's anything that's going on, or anything that we should be aware of. And I've found, I've tried to implement that myself with raising my own children, very selective about where they can go. And although I know that things can happen even outside of you spending the night at a relative or friend's home, but just trying to minimize the possibility as much as you possibly can. But that stood out for me, with my family and my upbringing.
Yes, and that's a great point. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, you're right. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what you were saying in regards to, we do have protective places. I was never able to spend a night over other people's house as well. However, with abuse, and I've had opportunities to speak to all kind of people, and as well as males who have been victims of abuse as well, sexual abuse as well, and assault and molestation. But it can happen anywhere. It can. There was one story that I had with a young man, right? His abuser attacked him at church in the bathroom. So I know, and I wish that we can just I just want to go everywhere. And I think that and we can, but what I would say is that communication is key. And I think that's what I hear you say in your home. You have full transparency. And so you felt secure enough to, even if it happened, no matter where it happened, you knew that you could talk to your mom and your dad about the situation. And that's great. That's number one, communication.
The other point is, we talk about how for generations we can sweep these type of matters under the rug in our community, unfortunately. And the other thing is as far as counseling is concerned, we know that if you're a victim of any type of trauma,
yes,
sexual abuse being, one of them, there is going to be significant impact on you, whether it's, immediate or whether it's long-term, in terms of PTSD,
yes.
Possible drug or alcohol abuse because you're trying to cope with the pain that you've either had to withhold because you didn't feel comfortable or in a safe environment where you could share what has happened. Um, how do we get members of our community to begin to open up to seek counseling to, to help ease the pain that's been caused for so many?
That is great. And as I said, I I breathe this because I am very passionate about bringing awareness and prevention to sexual abuse. One of the things that I advocate counseling, as I stated earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But I do understand, because I've been in this, that everyone's just not going to go to a counselor.
Right.
And that is the significance of Life After Advocacy Group, my agency. We create an atmosphere so you can come in and feel comfortable with talking about it. And then once you go through our program, then you have created a voice to where now you can go into a counselor's office and be able to go through the therapy that you need. Because you were right, it affects you emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
it affects you physically, verbal, and all those different origins of abuse begins to it definitely mess with our psyche. I mean, PTSD is real. That was one of my things. My PTSD was I didn't like to sleep with the television off. I know you're like, how weird is that? Well, the thing is because my abuser would come in the dark, like late in the night, in the midnight hour. So if it's completely dark in the house, then I felt like that's a possibility that it could happen again, even though I wasn't even in the same space with my abuser. So PTSD is real. Triggers, everyone has different triggers. Since I have written my book, I've had people to send me messages. I have people that has, chatted with me about a trigger. They have read it and say, you know what, I didn't even think about that this was until I read it, and that created a trigger. And we have to be sensitive to those, Dr. Aginah, because you never know when that would happen in the space of your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with that, I encourage counseling. And when you read my book, since it's out, it is a setting of a counselor, and I wanted that so much because of the fact that in our community,
Mm-hmm.
particularly, we shun away from counseling. But
Right.
we need the help. And I wanted to be able to, showcase that in a way of a positive light, to say it's okay to get counseling.
Now, so why did you decide to tell your story in the form of the book? I mean, because I'm sure with Life After Advocacy, with that group, you've probably shared your story with individuals who have come in. But why did you decide to be so transparent and
Right.
tell the world?
It's interesting. Yes, first part of that, yes, I have shared my story many times since 2004 is when I started the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very transparent. I am totally free from it, so I can really talk about it. I'm very empathetic to those who have been abused. But what I wanted and what I hope for this book, let me just say the two, and I think that would answer your question,
Mm-hmm.
is that what I wanted someone to hear a story of recovery and being triumph. Because we often hear about us going through the stages, and we often hear about this happened to me, but we rarely hear about the overcomer.
Yeah.
The one who has been able to put their pieces of life back together again after it was stolen in such a dark place.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to share my story, and I wanted to be able to help someone. My hope for this book is that when you read it, and that whether it's for you, whether you've been a victim of that type of abuse, the way it's written is written in an origin of it should help anyone who has been through any type of harm, whether it's divorce recovery, whether it's, physical or mental or verbal or emotional, that how we go through the process, right? Then we transition, and then when the real forgiveness come, and then how we get to my life after. How we get to that place of, I am totally free. Like, that enemy thought he had me bound. And I know in a time of my life, I was in this dark place, but I recovered. And that is the premise of this book. That is why I wrote it, because I wanted that reader. That's why I put it to paper. To answer your question, that's why I put it to paper, because I wanted to, I wanted someone to see that there is hope and there is a life after being a victim of abuse.
How do you get to the point of forgiveness, though?
Oh, yeah, that's great. That's another, and I talk about that in the book as well.
So we got to make sure we read the book.
Yeah, no, and I'm saying it because to answer your question about why I put it to paper, and I say because I want people to know, because that's a very, very great question. It's because forgiveness is not for the other person; it's for you. Mm-hmm. That's, we hear that, we say that, and we know forgiveness is truly for you. You have to cut the cord. You got to cut it, because their baggage is lugging you around. So we got to first cut it. And for me, as I stated, my abuser was my biological father. So for one, I love my daddy, and I use that term. You love daddy, you love mommy, right? And also the word tells us to don't harden our heart. And the reason why the word tells us that is because when our hearts are hardened, love can't penetrate through it. Mm-hmm. And when love can't penetrate through your hardened heart, then you can't forgive, because love covers a multitude of sin, right? Mm-hmm. So if you cannot allow it to permeate your heart, then you can't forgive. And so for me, there's a two-step way of forgiving. One is that you definitely have to forgive from your heart first. You have to therapeutically work with that heart, because the heart is like a dark, dirty place, is what I call it. Matters of the heart is real. Like every secret, every crypt, every dust, dirt is in the heart. You got to first deal with that heart of yours, because it starts in the heart. You got to start seeking and praying and ask the Lord to purge me like David did. Cleanse me, wash me like hyssop. We got to do that. And whatever our belief is, whatever your belief system is, but you got to seek that recovery place. Your heart needs to be cleared. Because if you're holding on to forgiveness, you're walking in a dark tunnel. Unforgiveness, you're walking in a dark tunnel, right? Mm-hmm. And so once your heart has been purified and purged, then you can honestly, Dr. Aginah, forgive from your mouth. You can forgive from the mouth.
So Dr. how long did it take you to get to that point where you were able to forgive with your heart? And then,
well, I had people around me. I had prayer warriors. I had a circle of influence. I had people who were that I can talk to, right? As well as, counseling. And it was a journey, Dr. Aginah. And I don't want to say, because, some people are like, okay, I ain't there. I get it. You're not there. And I'm not trying to make you get there, because I want to meet you where you are. I want to talk to you where you are. But what I say, it's a journey. So, I'm 48 years old. Mm-hmm. I'll be 49. I started writing this book 15 years ago. And the reason why I couldn't finish it is because I wasn't through yet. I wasn't through healing yet. Mm-hmm. Every time I pick it up, I just wasn't done. I wasn't through healing through my heart. My heart still was dark. And I remember very clearly when God spoke to my heart very clearly. I was at work and I said, why you got to speak to me at work? Because, when you had a cathartic moment, you just break down and start crying, and everybody like, why are you crying? You okay? Because that's a sign of the purification.
Yes.
I just broke down, just start crying. He said, because your heart is angry. I'm like, how's my heart angry? I'm nice at people. I'm waving at people, and they ask you how you doing. You be like, oh, I'm great. You got all your little, bless the Lord. I mean, you got it all down, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you're angry inside. And that's what he told me. I was angry. And so I had to deal with that thing. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey. And I'm so grateful that he chose me. And I'm so grateful that I can truly stand before you today and be like, I'm healed. I don't gloat in that. I'm grateful for that. I thank God for that. And I'm glad that I can help, and I want to help other people. And that's why this book is where it is because I want to help other people.
When you reflect on, I don't know, something you said was just a trigger, because I was thinking about my own journey when I wrote my book, which Ultimately, it's about single parenting, and I'm now single parent by way of a divorce after 11 years of marriage. And I remember when I was writing, and it's in the book, and I talk about how someone asked me if I was healed, from just the turmoil of the marriage and going through a divorce. And I remember saying, I'm about 75% healed, but I was able to acknowledge that, because I had to get to a certain place. But I also felt like I couldn't say that I was 100% healed, because I thought maybe in some way then maybe I'm unable to relate any longer to someone who's just now entering that journey of being, a single parent. But when you reflect on the fact that, you started writing this book 15 years ago, but you had to, you couldn't get through it because you just weren't there yet.
Right.
And when you look at what you went through then to get to this point now, how does that make you feel?
Liberated. Can I just use liberation?
Yeah.
And I think that was like that stamp. But I want to reflect on what you said about the 75% and not being relatable. I believe that we will always have a kindred spirit for someone who experienced what we walked through. That's why we walk through it.
Yeah.
That's why we have overcame it. So I can be able to walk with you. That makes sense. I want to walk with you. And I'm still empathetic and I'm still sympathetic, because I feel for you, but I also know where you've been. So I just wanted to say that yes, and there's gonna always be life triggers. There's gonna always be memories. There's things that I remember as vivid as yesterday. So will they ever go away? No. But what I am saying, it don't hurt the same way.
Right. Yeah.
It don't hurt the same way, Dr. Aginah. I feel like I can be able to definitely help pour into someone and be able to help talk to someone. So I want to make sure that, what was that question?
Oh, I wanted to know how you feel. And you said you feel liberated.
I was like, I want to make sure I said that right.
Oh. So let's talk about Beyond the Shattered Glass. The setting is a counselor's office.
Yeah. Yes.
And the story, though it's fictional, but it is based upon real life events.
Yes. It's a fictional memoir, actually. Yes.
So let's kind of talk about
Okay.
why did you decide the setting? And I don't know, you may have touched upon this earlier in a previous question. Why did you decide the setting of a counseling office?
Honestly, Dr. Aginah, it just kind of fell in that way. Cassidy, Noelle Winters, is a character. When you read this book, when the reader reads this book, you're going to go through a journey with Cassidy. You're going to go through her life, her daily life, and how she responds outside of the counselor's office, how she relates inside the counselor's office. And I wanted to make sure that I created a setting where that it produced a thought of, it's okay to go to counseling.
Yes.
It's okay to seek counseling. It's not a bad thing. Counseling is not a bad thing. And one of the things I hear all the time, and you probably heard it too, is that I'm not gonna tell nobody my business. I don't need to talk to nobody.
But I'm not crazy.
Right. Yeah. Ain't nothing wrong with me.
Right.
But what you realize is that it's very cathartic. Because we tend to talk to our friends on the phone.
Yes.
We tend to tell, I'm gonna call, Aginah and tell her, like, girl, I'm going through this thing. This happened. And you being the friend that you are, you're just gonna be like, yeah, I'm sorry. But that's just a moment. Counseling is more like a movement.
Yes.
So, like the Me Too movement, it's more like going to counseling is a movement, because there's a result to it. There's something that you're going to come out on the other end with it. And so I really wanted to stress that. I really wanted to stress that counseling is okay. And so I can't tell you that's how it started, because remember, this has been a 15-year journey. And, it started in all kind of ways. I got several manuscripts, but this is where it ended. This is how the Lord, and I'm so pleased with it. I'm very pleased with it.
Now, are you doing it? I know we're still in the midst of dealing with COVID and folks aren't really gathering in large settings, but are you doing book tours? Have you, or are you just doing your virtual book tours in terms of interviews? How are you continuously getting the word out about the book and connecting with your readers?
Yeah, and that's a very, again, a very good and tough question, because we are living in this time, this pandemic, where we can't get out. And then I am very sensitive to that. One, because I'm asthmatic. So I myself want to be mindful of other people. Yeah. And so I do have what they call Chat with Dr. Ketra. I put those on my website. So my next one is August 10th. And you can register on my website at www.drketra.com. You can go in and you can type that in and you can register. And then you can come in, and it's a Zoom setting. And we can talk, we can dialogue about, especially for the ones who've read it, and then, because you're going to come with questions. Or even if you have not read it, you just want to jump in and ask me questions or see what it's about. But my goal has been to have a chat with Dr. Ketra every month, with hopes that we can soon overcome this pandemic and be able to meet with people, because I really do want to meet with the people and sign their books. But if you order your book on my website, it is signed. So I definitely autograph it, but I definitely want to meet the people, because I'm a person.
And tell us again, people can get the book at
www.drketra, Ketra.com. drketra.com.
Perfect. I really like the idea of having a chat with Dr. Ketra, because that does, I find like when you're able to have either those one-on-one or intimate conversations with groups of people, they feel more comfortable with talking and sharing and asking questions, because sometimes when you're in a larger setting,
Right. And I try to create that atmosphere, because that's the whole mission of Life After Advocacy Group as well, is creating an atmosphere of comfort, of trust, of where you can just come in and be like, okay, I can listen, because you're going to always go with reservations. I get that. That's just who we are. But my hope is that once you are in the chat, that you begin to see that it is really a safe space. It really is. I really can't ask these questions, because you can either type it in or you can definitely ask me. And I try to be as transparent as I can. I believe that I have been healed and have overcome this triumphantly, that I can be able to help someone else. That's my hope. That's always my hope.
Do you, and just curious, because I know that you also, you're first lady of your church. And one of the things that, and I've talked about this with other people when we talk about the relationship in terms of our faith-based communities, and working with families who, have experienced, a victimization, whether it's sexual abuse, domestic violence, what have you. How do you, as being the first lady of a church, what role do you see the church, mosque, synagogue, what have you?
Yes.
What role do they play in helping combat, some of the violence that's against women, children, young boys, as far as sexual abuse is concerned?
I believe we play a major role, because in whatever religion platform that we profess to be, that we spend more of our time confessing that religion, right? And I believe that it should be a comforter. You should be able to know that if you share, if you go here, that this is a comforter to me. So I believe that that we are one, the first, base of that. And again, we don't talk about it as much in our religious sectors, because it's swept up under the rug. But we have to talk about such things because they are real and they affect one word, and that's called people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It affects people. You are affecting the people that you are ministering to, speaking to, praying for, whatever that looks like. Those are people, and they are affected. So you can't tell me that with God all things are possible, and then I'm still hurt inside. I'm still broken. And then when I leave there, well, I just went and I got my moment of, okay, but who can I talk to?
Right.
Are they going to judge me? Are they going to put this stigma on me? Are they going to talk about me? How about that one?
Mm-hmm.
If I share my story with Aginah, not Dr. Aginah, because see, Dr. Aginah, I could go in and sit in her office.
Right.
But if I share it with Aginah,
right,
she's just going to go tell her friend. Because, everybody got a friend that they talk to. Trust. And so I think that church, religion, is the biggest platform, and we have to be able to speak to the whole person. Mind, body, and spirit. That's the whole person. You can't just speak to my spirit and forget my mind and my body. Or you can't just speak to my mind and don't touch my heart or my body. It's just the whole person. It's the whole man. So that's how I felt.
Do you have, with your consulting, do you do any trainings for ministers or members of faith-based community in terms of how to deal with or work with victims of abuse?
Yes, I do, Dr. Aginah, because you know why? That was my passion. It was for the church, and that's just embodied, whatever that religion. See, when I go into these trainings, I don't look at if you're Buddhist or if you Muslim, if you're a Christian or if you Catholic. I don't look at that. I look at the person, and that's because you're a person.
Right.
And so we have to deal with this person because this person is hurting. This person have been, abused. This person has went through divorce. This person has been betrayed and has dealt with unforgiveness. We got to deal with the person. And I know we speak that, and I don't want to discredit, the man or woman of God. I'm not saying that at all. And so I don't want to misinterpret that in any form. But what I am saying is that when I come in and do training, and yes, I train leaders in every capacity, ministry leaders or, corporate leaders. I cater my training sessions to that group of people that I'm training. And I just try to come in very relatable. It's very interactive. It's very engaging. And it's not just me talking, because who wants to hear me talking the whole time? It deals with everybody, because in order for us to be who we are to be here on this earth, we got to be whole people.
Right.
We just got to be whole people. And if we can get away from our religious facades and let's deal with the person, then I think we'll be okay. When you agree, I don't know. Maybe I'm too optimistic. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely right about that. So what's next? I mean, I know right now you are focused on your book, but what's next? How are you going to continue to build off the momentum of this book, which I think is a must read for folks?
Thank you. That's a great question. Again, you have good questions today. Obviously, you think about those things, especially if you are a very ambitious person and you're very forward thinking. I have been playing around. I have released also a leadership manual that works interactively with my leadership recourse training. However, I'm gonna write probably a book on leadership.
Okay.
It's gonna be my next book. That's what I say. We don't know which way it's gonna go, but I have the topic already. But I actually, believe it or not, I wanted to do that first, but I couldn't because this had to be released first.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the next thing. I don't know when the next thing will happen, but that's the next thing.
And I'm just curious, it just struck me. How did you come up with the title, Seeing Beyond the Shattered Glass.
Yeah, that's a story too. So interesting. I have a copy of my book with me, but yeah, I was praying and I saw glass. I didn't know what that looked like, Dr. Gina. I just knew it was glass. I was trying to piece it together. And I wanted it, let's just speak metaphorically. When you have glass, when you see a piece of glass, like the glass is on your shelf behind you, it's together. It's perfectly polished, it's poised, it's been through the strongest of heat, it's been through everything to be a perfect example of what that piece of glass should look like. But when we're born, that's how we are.
Mm-hmm.
When we're born, when we come out of our parents' womb, we have like that piece of glass. It's all together.
Right.
But life begins to happen. And then one day it just breaks and it shatters. And how do we see beyond that shattered glass? How do we get to the place of hope? How do we get to the place that I can get back to that whole piece of glass? So that is how I basically generated that. Like, I want people to know that it doesn't matter what we go through. We understand that we all been shattered. There's no perfect people. No matter how we want to look perfect, no matter what kind of vehicle we drive, no matter what kind of clothes we wear, no matter how much money we profess to have in the bank, no matter how big our house is, there are no perfect people.
Right.
But we strive to get back to some type of wholeness. And we got to be able to see past and beyond the shattered glass. And that's how I came. And that was kind of my thrust. That's how it was revealed to me. And so the cover was like a revelation, like, oh, that's perfect when I seen it myself. So I was just as shocked. I was amazed as well.
Well, I am very excited for you. And I mean, and just all of the work that you've been doing. So it's good to be able to get to know you, have an opportunity to talk to you, and let other folks get to know you as well. I would love to talk more and have you back on the podcast so we can do some follow up. I'm definitely going to make sure that I check out your chats with Dr. Ketra. So we've got to tell the listeners again, you do these once a month.
Yes.
And we can register by visiting your website, drketra.com.
Yes.
And of course, we can purchase your book
Yes.
directly from your website at
Yes.
drketra.com and get our signed copy of the book. All right.
Yes, yes. And then I throw a little treat in there as well, you know. I
Well,
give a gift.
good.
Yeah, and I'm a giver, so I'm always giving something. I be thinking about what I can give you before you even ask. You can definitely contact me on all social media platforms.
Yes.
On Facebook, it's Arthur Dr. Ketra. On Instagram, okay, because I'm new to this technology, so I'm trying to be intentional. Okay, I'm being intentional. So on Instagram, you can go to Arthur underscore Dr. Ketra. And then I believe on Twitter is Arthur Dr. Ketra altogether. But what I say is just search Dr. Ketra and it'll come up on all social platforms.
Perfect. Don't worry. I'm with the social media. I don't know. Facebook is always my friend.
Yes.
We have an interesting relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like Facebook. I don't know. I think it's the age group. My daughter is 19, and they were like, don't nobody be on Facebook. I do.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to reach this. I want to be reachable to all generations, from the baby boomers to the Gen Zers and Gen Yers and also the millennials. So I try to find and fit in where I can.
Right. Well, I will make sure that I continue to watch you, follow you, and keep in touch with you because I see you. I see you on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm trying. Thank you so much.
But it's been such a pleasure. But before we go, just if you could give some closing remarks and again, just tell us or reiterate, what is the one thing that you would like for people to walk away from after reading Seeing Beyond the Shattered Glass?
Okay, so my one thing of as inspiration, I just want to encourage you that you matter. You know that your voice matters. Speak your truth, tell your truth, and take your voice back. That is, if anything, that is what I want you to take away from this book, Seeing Beyond the Shattered Glass, and some inspiration of hope. You know, hope is good because that means we're hoping for something. When you're hoping for something, you're moving toward it, right? It keeps you moving. So that is what I would leave with you in regards to that. In regards to the other part where you asked me what was one of the things that, repeat that again. I'm always, my mind gets me.
What's the one thing that you want folks after they read your book? What do you want them to leave with? But you kind of
Yeah. With
inspire.
hope.
Yes. So again, folks can pick up a copy of your book at drketra.com. They
Yes.
can follow you on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. Did you say Twitter? Are you
I
on
am on Twitter. Yes, I'm trying with Twitter. I'm there.
Yeah.
Author Dr. Ketra.
So author Dr. Ketra, they can find you by doing a simple Google search as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And again, the chats with Dr. Ketra are once a month. All you have to do is go online to your website, sign up, and
That's it.
register. I can't wait to be able to do a chat with you so that we could talk a little bit more about the book. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and so if anyone is out there who haven't even, thought about it or just, go to the website, read about it. I have a little snippet on there. There's a sneak preview on the website. You can read about it. Gives you the prologue, and you can at least read the first few chapters.
And your website is absolutely awesome too.
Thank you so much.
I really like it. I like the interactive with the pop-up with
Yeah.
the yeah, it's really, really nice. So I want to thank you so much for taking time to join me here on Light It Up. And as always, whenever I end any episode, I always remind my listeners to make sure that they light it up and shine bright like a diamond. Till next week, take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me this week on Light It Up. Make sure you visit my website at www.lightituppodcast.com or www.aginahmuhammad.com. You can also find me on social media using the handle @LightItUpPodcast. If you like what you've heard, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or you can simply tell a friend about the show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode. Until next time, light it up and shine bright like a diamond.